people don't realize that, these biomarkers you have after adolescence or after you have, so if you have some kind of a depression that's triggered by something as a child, how long that sticks with you. So each of these phases, your brain has to adapt to jump to the next one. Now, again, the great news on this one, that maybe is the best analogy, is that if you say what's the difference between gestational and birth, is like, well, you're no longer gestational because you were born. So that phase of biology is gone. You don't have to worry about that one. So you go into the next phase, but then you say, okay, and the other one obviously is menstruation for women, is that you're postmenopausal. You go, okay, that is now stopped. So now you're in the next phase. So for you have these biomarkers along the way of saying what happens in the mammal.
Well, welcome, everybody.
It's great to be here with you.
Welcome, Dan, back to Wellness at the Speed of Light. This is round 2, and this is the first time I've actually been in studio since my second episode. So I've done like, now we haven't released all of them. There's like 20 episodes in between, but it's great to be in studio feeling somebody else's energy as opposed to looking at a screen. I love that too, and that's cool. But this is so much, nicer. And last time when we did our podcast together, I mean, there was an outpouring. I was getting message. People just love the way that you communicate your message of health and wellness. It's just right up, the alley of wellness at the, at the speed of light. And, you reached out, you were here in Minneapolis, and that's, it was awesome. And I said, immediately, of course, let's do it. Let's, let's get this done. Because we had so much unfinished. Because you remember last time when we did the show, we felt like we were being cheated at time. Because I forgot one of us had to go or something. We'll say, hey, we'll just do it, another time.
You asked me, you said, hey, when we were together. So I texted you. I said, hey, I'm in town. And you go, giddy, or Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning. So, no, hey. And it's always one of these conversations we have with people. You're amazing to me. And people always go, oh, you're always patronizing. I go, no, this is a guy that has a significant credibility. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But you're actually, there was nowhere in medical school to be as successful you are where the chapter said, I want to destroy the medical model. they didn't teach you that. And now 20 years later, you're going, or how many spine surgeries have you done?
Probably 9,000 something.
So 9,000, then you're going, hey, this is broken. I'm going, how is it broken? You've done 9,000 of these things and you're very good at it. But you're reaching out to say, no, the medical model just keeps people down. We got to change that. And so I find that very fascinating. Now, there are a lot of people who do it because they're self-promoters. But you come from a legitimate, very credible background saying, I have to do this better. I'm doing a disservice. In the OR, you're doing a great job. But you put them back into an environment that doesn't encourage them to get any better. And that's always been the problem with, way back from, the whole fitness movement that I was part of in Minneapolis here 44 years ago. Yeah, and it's, I mean, and the thing about it is that, as I'm out here and you talk about, wanting to disrupt the medical model, I always have to give, I just let people give a little background. It's not that medicine hasn't made amazing advances, right? We've discovered incredible molecules. The surgical techniques have become amazing, right? More and more minimally invasive, motion sparing in spine, but in everything, right? The way we do robotic surgery and endoscopic surgery and all these other things. The concern of mine is not that, especially America's a huge leader, right? In the race for innovation. You've been at the forefront of that. I know you've done a lot of stuff on wearables and all these other things. But the problem is that our society continues to get sicker and sicker. Our spend it's outrageous. We're in the $4-something trillion category, going to $7 trillion. We're promoting continued sick care, but by not, and I love, before the show we were talking about how we want to kind of maintain, let's just call it your body working at its optimum function as long as we can. Listen, there's going to be a decline over time, but what if we can reverse that decline over time, and instead of starting to tail off at 25, 30, and then it's a downhill slide where people by 40, they're like, you know what, I'm going to live another 40 years maybe, or whatever it's going to be, but I'm not going to feel well because everything's declining. I'm in decline. So stemming that, and then, just seeing all these people, bags of pills. Oh, gosh. Half of my patients come in with bags of pills. They don't even know what they're taking, right?
I don't even, and again, I don't know why they're on all these meds, but I try to look at them and help them to just make decisions, have them get second opinions, things like that. But also they're so chronically ill. I just, was on, a show the other day, and 129 million Americans have a chronic disease, and almost half of those have 2 or more, and then like 10% have 5. It's absolutely, out of control. And I see this day in and day out. And the current way that we are approaching these things, it's not working. It's clear. It's not like I'm saying something revolutionary. Right. Look at this chart. Look at the chart of every chronic disease. It's going in the wrong direction. Obviously, we're not doing it right. So we need to flip it completely around. Lifestyle medicine, choices, biohacking. How do we prevent most of these diseases, which are, I know I'm speaking to the choir.
No, again, this is, I always, it's what's funny about whenever I talk to someone, what I consider a peer or contemporary, or where we ended up, we both think alike. It's like,
yes,
I like the way he said that, because I always hear how to make that sentence sound better. And I go, I think I'm going to steal something from you, but no. I find what your goal is outcome based and not business model based.
Correct.
And trust me, it's a capitalist society. I love the idea that people make money. I love the idea that physicians go to school and make a living. I love the idea, all that. That's capitalism. But the reality is, it's not illegal to be unhealthy in the United States. There's nothing wrong with it. It's funny, we'll trash talk the drunk, but we won't say anything about anybody else who has a variety of health lifestyle conditions, but you just can't be an alcoholic.
Yes.
That's the worst thing in the planet. And I go, oh my goodness. But so he quits, and you don't applaud him, but yet all the other diabetes or any other lifestyle decisions, we go, oh no, they have to take those pills. And I'm going, well, the alcoholic had to drink his beer, or his wine or his scotch. So it's amazing what in the U.S. the cultural differences of what we think is normal and what we accept and what we don't, and it's not illegal.
Yes.
And that's really quite fascinating to me. Again, growing up, I find it fascinating, even with marijuana, for example. And again, we never know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so but that's what makes it so much better.
When growing up in I was born in '57, so it was like no one talked about smoking pot. I mean, they all did, but no one said, it's illegal, right? So when I was working with cardiacs down at Scottsdale, this 73-year-old guy was a drop down, and I said, "Do you smoke?" And he goes, "Cigarettes?" No, he goes, "I smoke pot every day, though." And I'm going, "Wait a minute," and he was just like, "No, it's legal. What do we mean?" And I'm going, I just can't figure that out. You've had 3 events and you survived. I've never seen that. Now you smoke weed every day and you're watching cable TV and you're paying, $180 for Medicare, and your next bypass is going to be $180,000, and you don't see the flaw in that. You don't see that someone's going to pick up the $180K because it's legal to smoke pot. It's legal to be, have 4 heart attacks, but who's paying the bill? Medicare is. No, your grandkid is paying the bill, and there's not enough grandkids that are going to say, I'm not paying the bill for that guy. So the problem is that it really culturally, I think the model is just not going to work, and with the sheer number of elderly or over 50 compared to the number of young paying in, and the lifestyle diseases that we've certainly said, I'll adapt that one or adopt that one, whichever is the correct way of looking at it, because it's not illegal.
I mean, just think about it. I mean, if we just think in simplistic terms, right? If I said, you know what, if you do these things for 1 year, there's a 90% chance that you'll be sent a check for $1 million.
Yeah.
It's 90%, I'm in.
Right.
If we tell people that if you change your lifestyle choices and the earlier you do it, the better, there's a 90% chance you're not going to develop a potential chronic disease that is in your future. People are like,
that's what I'm saying. I don't get that.
It doesn't make sense. And my frustration, with people is that they are coming in, and I know that you know this because you talk to so many people, constantly. Their level of education and they're not connecting how all of these different toxins they're putting in the body, all these foods, anything that has a wrapper and has, 37 ingredients, right? You don't need 37 ingredients for a piece of food that's this big. Like, what is even in there? We don't even know what it does. Half these things are not studied, blah, blah, blah. But they're so far, the education in this country Not everybody. Some people are, but that's all they think about. They're like the biohacking community. That's literally all they think about, right? But that's a small community compared to the general public. If the disparity between where people are and what they really need to be doing, right? I'm not saying it's easy to do those things, to change your lifestyle like that. I mean, it seems it's simple, but it's not easy. I mean, I think that's but the disparity in education. So breaking through, even with everything I'm trying to do with the podcast, with being vocal on social media, with just talking to people all the time, with developing the wellness clinics, there's still such there's such a wide gap. It's like crossing a river, right? If you take it biblically, if you take it from movies, if you look at any wars, right? It's always a thing. Like, if you look at what Germany was trying to do to England, it was that big thing. How do you cross the English Channel? I feel like what I'm trying to get out to people, what you're trying to get out to people, we've got to figure out a way to get across that English Channel and fight this good fight.
Yeah, I really struggle with that, and I think I don't think you have to look back from a timeline and from a like being back here, and it's sort of a transition. If you allow me, we were better in 1920s and 1930s when we didn't have free time and we didn't have automation, and you had to make your own food, because no one realized that it was mowing the lawn. I mean, you can go back to my youth or your youth. Is recess was for the child's brain, and we never thought of it. We thought, get those kids out of here. And so you look at it and I go, well, wait, what is this movement piece? Why is it so easy to be lazy? And you go, well, we were always lazy, but we had to get stuff. If you had to go, if you were going to go get a gallon of milk, you had to go milk the cow, right? And you couldn't drive through the drive-through.
That's right.
So no one has ever looked at the automated mammal and how destructive it is, and how convenience has added to that. So again, the education piece is, for me, is when I look at, most people who read my first book will say, man, I watched my dad die. That was ugly. I don't want to see that. And I make the analogy, when I was growing up, Dean Martin smoked cigarettes. Johnny Carson smoked cigarettes. Andy Griffith smoked cigarettes on Mayberry, black and white TV. Yeah. But when they all started dying, and even though the warning label was on, people go, no, that cigarettes don't really kill you. And then all of a sudden you say, hey, we should rethink this cigarette thing. So I wonder, the river is the best when it comes to, I didn't think they were serious about these foods being a problem. Now all their friends are going, I got to make some changes.
Yep.
But that can be, as you say, a 25-year. Tomorrow I'm going to make them though. This year I'm busy. Tomorrow I'm going to make them. And all of a sudden you're 80 years old and you don't know how to drive the car home, and you go, it's too late. So then your grandkids are going, hey, I mean, I get calls from it's funny, young 30-year-olds, 25-year-olds going, hey, you got to help my dad. I go, hey, your dad's done. You got to help yourself, because your dad is, he's up down the hill and laying on the bottom right now, and he's going to lay there for 30 years because he's not giving up, unless you can figure out a way. But I still think the whole fitness movement that we started here 44 years ago in August. So what was interesting about it is there was a club in town. It's funny. 44 years ago in August, they put 10 strength machines in the lunchroom. It was a tennis club. And the owner said, what do you mean work out? And I go, no, they'll pay to work out. And he was like, we call this a racket and swim club because they come here to play rackets and they swim. But I don't know what you mean work out. I don't get it. And I said, well, no. And it was $3 a month. So basically you come in and you could lift weights. And it was sad because he didn't get it from his generation, because he'd never had the concept of, to him, rackets was a hobby. It was like a leisure activity. So again, he never thought of being healthy or unhealthy. He did his job 12 hours a day. He was physically active, and then he played golf from a leisure standpoint. The idea of being healthy was like, I don't know what even that means. So, but with the clubs, it was amazing. I still think the boomer was the first guy to adapt it, because they miss playing as a child. So they miss going outside,
right, of course,
playing tag and stuff like that. And that was the first generation. So when I took my grandfather to the one club, he could not believe someone would stand in front of a mirror and lift a weight. He thought that was the dumbest thing in the world. He goes, what is he doing? I go, well, Grandpa, he's lifting weights. He goes, I know, but he ain't lifting anything. I go, actually, he's lifting 40 pounds. And he goes, no, but he's not lifting anything. So he couldn't grasp the idea of, I want to just go home and sit down. I would never pay to come in here and lift a weight and not lift anything. So culturally, the idea, because that generation was always active, and they actually didn't understand, fast foods, because that was how they. So all of a sudden that timeline came in. And to your earlier point, what you've done in medicine is so phenomenal that you can treat things instantly, so the guy can keep his sedentary lifestyle, and now he shows up 20 years later, and you're going, okay, well, you treated me and you told me that I'm fine, but then the TV said, hey, here's your fastest remote, you can stream these and you can watch TV. So there's messages of selling them a product that they can have fun. And again, I'm glad, and I'm fortunate that we didn't have Game Boys when I was a kid, because that immediate high from that Game Boy, I don't know, man.
All those dopamine hits. It's hard. It's
you're
hard
competing
to get over.
against it, and to get a kid that was very, very. Man, after they started crawling, they stopped and they sat in front of a TV. They don't find joy in moving backwards or forward, but that Game Boy or whatever game they're playing, that dopamine, you're going, okay, I want you to go out and kick a can around. They go, what? What do you do when you get it? You kick it again. I go, you Uncle Dan, you're losing it, man. We ain't going to go kick the can. I mean, come on. What do you mean kick the can?
Yeah, just do anything.
That's not, there's no fun in that.
Yes.
You've seen this game. Look at the adrenaline. I think I've told this before. One of the biggest arguments I had was when they started saying, this Game Boy is a great cardiovascular training device, because kids are heart rates are 125 while they're sedentary. I go, no, they're sedentary. And they go, no, their heart rate's beating 125 a minute. They must be getting a great cardiovascular workout by sitting down playing a game. I go, well, no, they're not. Their beats are higher.
Well, either that, or they're in complete fight or flight mode.
And so again,
and they're actually like their catecholamines are going. They're fired up. It's literally the opposite of meditation and all these things that are actually good for them. Going on. Right, taking a nature walk, just being outside, kicking the can in the dirt.
But the animal in them says, "I'll do this fight or flight." So they thought, well, the guy told me if I get my heart rate for 125 for 30 minutes, it's good for me. So I'm going to play Game Boy, and I'm going, oh my goodness. So again, you got to say, well, first off, you shouldn't have bought that, but it actually is pretty cool. So I think the train wreck is your world. The surgeries you do, you got to admit. I mean, come on.
It's amazing. Listen,
can't think
I didn't invent the surgeries, but I have the privilege of growing up standing on the shoulders of giants. I was trained by all these amazing people, so I'm able to do these things. The technology has gotten to the point; it's incredible. It's incredible, the advances. Right. But you know how many people that I do surgery on, we fix them, and actually sometimes it's incredible. I mean, they come in, they can hardly walk because they've got stenosis. They have horrible leg pain. Some of them need big surgeries, and some of them do remarkably well. But I'm not fixing anything else. Right. They're sick. They're diabetic. Right. They're obese. Yeah. They're metabolically unhealthy. They can, even though they no longer maybe have leg pain, they still can't walk 2 blocks because they're not healthy enough to walk 2 blocks. And it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah. Like, we need, and I talked to them. I said, please change your lifestyle. Do this. The one thing we're pretty adamant on is the smoking piece. Unless it's more urgent, then we do it because we have to do it. But otherwise, the smoking, because it interferes with the fusion. But a lot of them, once they fuse, they go back to smoking, and it's a disaster.
We did that with the cardiacs at St. Mary's in '84. I mean, Dr. Schoening. By the way, Herb, if you're listening, if you're still in Minneapolis, thank you. You're the legend, man. But if they had a heart attack and survived it, and we went through cardiac rehab, and they survived 30 days, they'd start smoking again, figuring, well, didn't kill me. I guess I'll go back to smoking. Sure. And I'm going, my goodness, what a mindset. But that's just the way it is. And so I think we're in a timeline from a culture that we can just keep pushing people down, and they accept it. But I really worry about where we're going to house all the people, and where you're going to feed them, who's going to bathe them, and who's going to do it, because they have no function. Yep. And so at some place, it's the train wreck is, if you think you want to pay $15,000 a month for one of your relatives to sit in a nursing home for the last 10 years of his life, who's going to pay that? And it's all self-induced because of automation and food choices, and then the lifestyle diseases that came from that have been simply medicated to keep them under control, which keeps them alive. So you pay another $15,000 to keep them, and it's a profit. You're a consumer. I mean, that's all you are. So but again, who's the fault? You guys should go, we should have made insulin. We shouldn't have had this surgery. And you're going, well, that would have helped us. They would have died. But no, you would think that they will love having this mobility. Let me see if I can make a terrible tangent for you. But
I love it. Tangents. Our show is all about tangents, actually.
I get in a huge sort of like battle. And people always go, what's the best exercise that releases the most endorphins for me? I mean, I just love this workout. I just feel like it's just so great. And I said, you'll never match the joy from being with the pros, you'll never match the joy. Like with Lamont, winning the tour is a joy he'll never reproduce in his entire life. Okay, that's a one day.
I mean, that's a pinnacle.
Yeah,
that's the one
right.
day. That's the moment.
But if you said to a guy that's 65 years old, 70 years old, 55 even, and is 25 pounds overweight and can't walk, and I say, I'm going to put you on an exercise program every day you're going to thank me for it because it's going to be the most fun in your entire life. And he'll go, no. And I know that I'm not going to find an endorphin that's ever going to thrill that guy because he's never done it before. But if I can get him fit enough that when he sees his grandkid and the grandkid comes running across the floor and says, Grandpa, let's go for a walk. And they walk around the lake. They walk 2 blocks and the kid is talking. And you're going, now, Grandpa, that high? That one is the high you are working for. You'll never find that in a workout. So you got to get them to figure out where is the joy going to come from, because the working out only allows me to have that kid say, this is the coolest day of my life. And so that's what you got to get them. But I think they still trying to sell, like with Peloton or anything else, no, these workouts are really going to be fun and you're going to get this big rush from them. And at 20-year-olds, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, some people.
But for the majority of people, the joy in their life is spending some time with someone else and having them say thank you. And
you know what's interesting about what you're saying? Listen, you just opened up about 19 things that I want to talk about. But it's interesting using a mission or a goal to help people to have a reason to get better is just brilliant. I had Dr. Robert Massone, he's a neurosurgeon, just a brilliant guy, and he talked about that. And I asked him, when you have somebody in front of you, because I'm always trying to pick other surgeons' brains, because we have all these people that have given up. Right. So I always ask them, how do you get people to want to participate in their own health care, in recovering from a surgery if we're going to go down that route and this and that. And it's about, and Massone was great. I mean, he said it so well. He just talks about giving them, really sitting down with them and thinking about what is it that is going to bring you joy, and how is taking care of your health and these things then going to allow you to do that, because you have to align. We always talk about aligning your values and your mission statement with your actions, and that's one way to do it. I mean, that's a great point.
I appreciate
and just having a mission. We need a mission. Yeah,
and I think that the question I wish they would ask primary care docs, when you turn, postmenopausal women is clearly a decline in bone density. I mean, that phase of biology is same, but you just simply ask them, what are you going to miss the most when you can't do it anymore? And they go, what do you mean? I go, because pretty soon on this road, you're going to stop doing something, and you're going to go, I didn't know I wouldn't be able to play golf anymore. I wouldn't know I couldn't walk my dog anymore. I wouldn't know. Well, I want you to write it down, because you won't be able to do that in 10 years. You won't be able to. For the rest of your life, you'll look out the window, seeing someone else walk their dog, and you go, I wish I could go walk my dog. And you're going, but you told me I had to work out. No, I told you I wanted you to walk your dog for 10 years. So without that purpose, athletes, and again, I was fortunate. I mean, with Lamont for 5, he was a legitimate. I mean, to get an award coming up for the Congressional Medal for.
I mean,
he's a
legend, right?
17, but those guys, if you ask them, did they ever enjoy exercise? No. But you ask the team from Boston who just won the NBA, that feeling winning that made all those workouts like, oh my gosh, I thought I was working out to have fun. No, I'm cherishing this moment, and the only reason I got to do this is because I put the time in and there, and you're going, no, I'm still selling the joy of the time, and that's the fitness movement. And I think that's why a lot of the over 40-year-old people don't go in the clubs anymore, because they're still selling that immediate one-day return, and they haven't made the connection to what is it you're going to miss. And, for you, if I can't bend over and tie my shoes, you're going to go, well, you never told me that. And they're going to go, no, you're not going to be able to without a spine. And you're going, you got to tell me that kind of stuff. I think they think, and so to your point on education, I think you have to be very practical with explanations to say, you're not going to be able to do that. Don't shoot me on this one, but don't call me and say, hey, I can't walk up the flight of steps anymore.
No, absolutely. No, listen, if you don't, if people don't take care of their health, I talk about, with my patients, and I just say, you know what? Let's pretend that we're let's watch a movie. The movie is your life in 20 years. Here's what you're going to look like. You've got diabetes. You're morbidly obese. Your back is a train wreck, and a lot of it has to do with that. You've got bad knees, you've got bad hips because of your weight, because of your diet, the toxins, all this other stuff, your metabolic. So let's look at you. Let's watch you in the medical ICU as the doctors are coming around talking about your dialysis, what drugs you have to be on, whether they're going to be able to extubate you from your heart attack and whatever. And you just get a blank stare like, that's not good. That's not. But, it's funny what you said about like these other guys. I love the way, and I don't remember the direct quote, but one of my favorite people ever is Arnold Schwarzenegger, because what he's been able to, he's amazing, right? Arnold, right?
You know the story with him and I, don't you?
I don't know the story. All right. Let's
sorry, but Arnold.
Tell me, and then I'll tell you what
it was hilarious. Sorry, Arnold.
Just throw him out. Maybe he'll make a comment in the comment section. We'll tag Arnold on this one.
Anyway, go ahead. So you want your comments from Arnold?
No. I got to hear your story now. Now it's out of the bag. We can't. You can't. But I was going to say the comment from Arnold is great. He said, the reporter asked him, he's like, you're in the gym 4 hours a day lifting all those weights. Right. He's like, how do you do that? I mean, is that something you... And obviously he loved it too, and he loved all the hoopla around it, but 4 hours... I mean, that's a lot of hours in one day, and and then it's road, and those guys hate it, half the time, because it's so much work. And he's like, you know what I'm thinking when I'm lifting those weights? Holding that trophy above my head.
Exactly.
He's doing it for that moment, so the trophy
is the
in healthcare is walking around the lake with your grandkid, or being able to walk the golf course, or being able to be upright, and that's where we are, or being able to walk a block. Some of my patients, even if you fix their radiculopathy, they can't walk a block because they're so obese and sick, or they have heart disease, or they have this and that. It's most of it's self-inflicted, and we got it. But Arnold's awesome. So tell us about the Terminator.
My wife wouldn't let me. So we were at okay. I can't believe I'm saying this publicly. So, but I'll have to edit some of it. Okay. This is the problem about you and I getting together. This is why I said I should never get together with you.
Listen, this is the beauty about this show is that it's a free for all.
We were in the Four Seasons, and again, that's trust me, we had no business being there. There's way out of our paycheck, and I wanted to for whatever reason, I want to take a steam, right? And I felt like exercising, and I met Arnold only because you obviously know who he is when in the workout area, and he had these funny sandals on. And they were like these beige sandals, and so I'm going, man, that's I've never seen sandals like that in a workout area. But I'm not. Who's going to tell Arnold that those shoes don't match the whole gym theme at the Four? And then, of course, never being in the Four Seasons in Maui before is like, oh, well, I guess I don't belong here anyway. So he said, he introduced himself in his accent, and I mentioned where I was from, and he started laughing about Jesse and about the governor at the time. And so I told my wife, I said, all right, honey, I'm gonna. Wherever it is, I just feel like getting a steam. And they have, those hotels have like steam rooms. And, it's like, I'm sorry, that's just like way too. But it was so, I said, and I opened the door to go in the locker room. And there's, these mahogany lockers. And all of them are closed, except one locker's open. But the showers are farther away. So you can hear the shower. But I look down and I'm going, oh, those are those sandals, man. And I was like, so I'm going, okay, for me, and again, if you have to get to the shower, which means you leave your clothes here, so you got to run back to the shower. But in the men's locker room, people don't wear clothes. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? You get out of the shower, you don't wear clothes in the shower, So I'm going, nah. And again, as a male, you're going, okay, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger's in the shower, and I'm coming out of there, I'm going, no, I can't do that. I'm not going. I'm just going to wait. I've got some pride left in me. I'm not going to be, because he's a massive, muscular guy. I mean,
you're just
seriously,
like,
I'm going, no, I'm like anyway, we're in there, and this, as I'm coming out to try to jump in the steam room, I'm guessing he was Japanese, comes out of the steam room, and he collapses right in the floor, and he's just collapsed. And Arnold goes, that's his second time of falling. He must be hurt. I'm going, oh, come on, lose the accent, dude. But so we ended up doing, resuscitating this guy. And I said, you got to call 911. We got to come in. And so I said, Arnold, you got to get out of here because it's, we're both, there's basically three guys with no clothes on. One guy's here. The 911 ambulance comes in. So we save the guy, and he can't speak any English, but Arnold's on his hands and knees with these biceps. I just go, my gosh, that's bigger than my abdomen. That is one massive thing. So the next morning he goes, hey, Mr. Expert, come over here. And he said, so we started talking about the same thing that you did. And he said, what is it with exercise? And so he's asking me these questions. And I said, he said, one of the day he was walking, and he said these guys, the biggest fear was not finding a toilet with a handrail because they couldn't get up off the toilet. And he said, so these men would say, I got to be careful where I go because, and so he's telling me this story. And again, it became very retrospective, which was fascinating because you don't see that in his personality. And he said, well, why don't you start doing squats or why don't you go to the gym? And he goes, well, no. I would go to physical therapy, but I'm not. And he goes, well, no, the gym doing these. And he said the guy's biggest fear was not being able to step up off the toilet because he didn't have the quad strength. But he never even thought the fitness was a solution to him. And it's because the marketing, he didn't say, I don't belong in there. I'm 60 years old. That's just for 20-year-olds. And so he gave me his address and his phone number and his email and said, you're calling me. I want to be a part of your book. But, again, what you would think of him, and for what anybody thinks of anybody, he was very passionate about helping people over 50 stay functionally movement. And I found him fascinating. But again, when I tried to explain to my wife, she was like, you don't know him. But the next morning, he was like, so the next 3 days at the hotel, I was always Mr. Expert. And I'm going, I just love that accent. But, my wife was like, oh my gosh, he's over there with Schwarzenegger. Couldn't have been a nicer guy. But you would never expect him to immediately have a story about an aging person whose loss of strength limited his life. And the guy never thought doing a leg press was going to help him because, and he said, I don't understand it. And his came out of the fitness world. Why did we fail these people that think, stepping up or have a functional movement doesn't have to be, can be done. You could do a wall squat or you could sit against a wall and do it. But the guy never, and so your point on education is, you seriously think your quad knows if you're in a club or if you're on the toilet? It doesn't know. It just knows to stand up. And if you can't stand up, you have to get stronger. Right? I mean, so if you go back to the cardiac days, I mean, again, when we start with having them walk, I just said they were really, really down on cardiac patients walking. They said, well, his heart was weak. That's why he had an event. He's got to lay in bed for a week. He has a weak heart, so he needs rest. And I go, it would be as stupid as today saying these senior citizens who are falling have weak quads, they need to rest. You go, don't you think you should just strengthen their quad? But no one would even think of that now. But that's how we treated cardiacs, 40 years ago. They had bed rest because they had a weak heart. That's why they had a heart attack. And you said, well, maybe make it stronger. They said, well, you can't make a heart stronger. This guy's, I'm going, so all the stuff that medicine has done in 40 years has created this phenomenal ability to cure a specific thing.
Correct.
And the culture has created an image of fitness. And the technology has created an environment of complete automation. And so you're either decaying daily, saving a specific cause with no purpose. And then you wake up at 60 and you're miserable. And you're wondering what happened to you. And you go, I was in the American culture, the mainland USA, from 1990 to 2020, and this is what we are producing at 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we're going to have, as you said, those 170 million people. 100 of those million people will be in a nursing home somewhere because they have no mobility.
We're producing our culture with our food choices, our lifestyle. Everything you said is just producing a bunch of people that just don't feel well, and they're not happy.
Right.
They're sick. They can't walk. They can't think. Mental health is deteriorating. Right. Look at all the research that has now been done in Alzheimer's disease to show how much of our lifestyle choices early on. Listen, there's genetic things, APO, E4, all that stuff. We don't have to get into it, but clearly being able to, it's just such a passion for me to get the word out because it's even in the gym, right? I see people all the time. Right. And I've struck up some conversations, but sometimes, I have to do what I have to do too. Because otherwise, I'll talk all day. So I talk to everyone in the gym and just tell them, what I think or whatever. And they probably walk away from me half the time anyway. But I see people in the gym, like you said, that need to be focusing more on strengthening or whatever. Right. And so they'll come to the gym, right? And they'll come in, maybe they'll get a shake beforehand because they haven't eaten. Then they'll walk on the Stairmaster for about 6 minutes. Then they'll do 3 biceps curls. And then they'll talk to their buddy. And then they'll be in the locker room for another 45 minutes, showering and doing their. And you could tell they can hardly move. They haven't accomplished anything. But all I can think of when I see these people, they're like, and it's usually they're a little bit old. They're upper 40s, 50s, 60s. There are so many things that they can be doing, but they don't know. They don't understand that we could be doing these things. They don't get it.
The fitness model, and I mean, like when we started here, I mean, every club that's been started, every franchise that's came out of this area, you can look at Anytimes came out of Hastings, you can look at Snap came out of here, the Lifetime clubs came out of the Normandale clubs, the flagship clubs. They're all, you go back 44 years and I was standing there. But it has never been an outcome-based business. And again, so in other words, if I'm paying you to paint my house, okay, you are my personal trainer, you're my personal painter, and I'm going to pay you $10,000 to paint my house. After a month, if you come every day to my house for a month and you haven't painted the house, I'm going to say, I'm going to pay you another month to paint the house. You go, but you never finished it. So I go, if you don't give me an outcome, why would I keep paying you?
Yes.
And you keep paying them. I go, no, but there's never a demand for outcomes. It's more that you have one. But you would never do that to a painter. You'd say, well, why don't you come back next month and maybe you'll get it done. And the next month and the next month. And you're going, so, but that's the model. And again, the thing that I find fascinating to me is they had to backdoor, and everybody did, tennis, golf, whatever communities, had to backdoor into pickleball because this community of people said, we don't care about the rules. We want to make a smaller court, an easier thing to hit, and we want to have fun. So we'll draw the lines we want to. We'll make up our own goofy thing. We'll call it a kitchen. We'll call it this goofy scoring. And people are going, hey, can you put a pickleball court in? Otherwise, we'll go somewhere else.
Yes.
So now they're going, hey, we got to have pickleball. Why? You didn't create it. No, the community of people saying, this is what, can we do this? Like, can we bring our dog in the restaurant? Can we bring our dog on the airplane? Yeah, sure. I guess you can. So pickleball was the big wake-up call, I think, for a lot of the things that said, no, now we're responsive because we have to be because we're building. They're asking for it. We were telling them what to do, and they were happy. And so it is interesting. I think, though, the stuff that you do, to me, is fascinating because, and again, that was another one of those transitions because I still, when I look at you sometimes, I go, oh, my gosh, I got to ask him something really intelligent because I'm here to learn more than I am to talk. If you look at the phases of the mammal, you can look at gestational being 9 months. And I think, so people say we're going to live to be 125 years old. And I go, no, the mammal has these phases. So we're not going to change it. You're still going to have a baby in 9 months. We're not going to say, okay, to make 125, we're going to change gestational to a year. Yeah. And we're going to wait till you're 25 to go through puberty. And then we're going to wait till 70 to have postmenopausal. But what you say by your biology hacks is that, no, in those phases, so like we would stop alcohol introduction to pregnancy because we didn't want fetal alcohol syndrome at 9 months. What you're doing with the biohackers you're having is say, okay, as you go through adolescence, okay, if you're in a destructive lifestyle, this phase, this is what you're going to lose. Right. And so the biohacker can come in and say, this is in fact like a pharmacy, the green lights or whatever. And you see it with recovery. I think the stuff you were saying with the brain is absolutely fascinating to me. That was, to me, is like, you got to be kidding me, because the cognitive loss, if you look at the Alzheimer's people who have no community interaction, that to me is like, okay, so in that phase of the mammal, they're already declining because they have no social connection. How do we stimulate them without a community? And you say, well, we'd put them on a medication. You go, no, we're not putting medications on them. We're going to stimulate the brain.
Correct.
And that to me is a phase of biology where it's normally declining. You're going to say, no, let's wait until after the next phase, because at the end of your life, you're biologically done. But if you say through adolescence, sedentary adolescent or an active adolescent, okay, if I can't get him to be active, what can I do to him with the therapies that you offer here that are replacement of, in other words, the 24-hour 7 of TV? Because you're not going to go into a home in America And take away the phones from people.
The phones are.
I'm
that's
sorry.
A whole other.
You're
that's
not going to
podcast.
mandate that. I mean, they're trying to do it in schools. But so what made you think there was that connection, and how did you get so creative about that? I mean, I'm asking you as a consumer now. You're frightening me.
No, it's awesome. No, the thing about it is it all goes back to. So before I get into that, I just wanted to say that it's so. You put it so well. That's why I'm so excited you're back on the show. The painting, right?
Yeah, right.
Here's the problem with American healthcare. Yeah. And again, I'm a consumer. My family, we've had all kinds of people saved by American healthcare. It's amazing what is being done. However, with the chronic disease management, with I don't feel good, with trying to slow down these phases of care, it's been a failure. So what do people do? Right? They're going through the traditional model healthcare systems. Okay. They're following whatever the person or people are telling them to do, which is in traditional care, medication after medication. Then you get this procedure, then you do this, and then, now you have diabetes, so we're going to do this, and so we're going to do that. You're following that. And to me, it's preposterous. It's so obvious that we're not making people better overall with the chronic disease. Everything points to it. I'm not saying this because it's my opinion. This is a fact. It's a stone cold fact. But yet, people will continue the same regimen. They'll treat their diabetes the same, if not worse. They'll treat their depression the same. They'll do all these other things. And unfortunately, the way that the medical system has been corporatized, has so much influence coming from all this big industry, we can't get out of our own way. And we're watching a slow train wreck. We don't know who's going to pay for it. It's not getting better, and people are continually doing the same stuff over. It's that insanity thing. You're doing the same thing. And so what your question about what I got. So I got into this a couple of years ago. I started looking at some of these things through Tram, who's one of my partners in the wellness clinics, and then my other partner, Dr. Dan Sipple, he's a physical medicine rehabilitation specialist, and they were all into these biohacks before I really wasn't. And one of my sons got hurt, and I got introduced to this stuff. Eventually, I read the science. It did not take that long once I read the science for it to click to me. Oh my God. Why is this not a baseline treatment? And right away, we came up with this tagline. It wasn't even a tagline. It was just something saying, recharging the human battery, right? Because our mitochondrial function, our cellular function, our brain function, which is all a function of those other things, it deteriorates slowly over time. Hormonal issues, all these things, they don't work as well. We all know that. This is like common sense.
Again, that's what I'm saying. You had to come up with something that said...
But what if you had scientists? So, for example, we know this is science. Right. Even though sometimes I'll talk about these things, and then people go on post and say that that's a sham, that's whatever. Do you know how much science there is behind photobiomodulation and near-infrared light therapy? Copious from basic science all the way up through clinical science. I didn't believe it either. I was a big skeptic. I'm like, that's a tanning bed. What's that going to do? Yeah. But yet, if you can change. So when you change the mitochondrial function, you restore it to a younger function. And not only that, mitochondria, it's a mitochondria were basically is another organism that was absorbed by it's a whole. Yeah, but that was our first connection. You're changing. It's a game changer if you can do that. And then it tells the cell also, hey, don't die. You're healthy. It makes immune system stronger. It makes your neurons stronger, and on from there.
For those who are new, one of the things that we talk about, our first thing, we saw that with Lamont is that at rest, I kept asking, there's got to be something wrong with his mitochondria because his oxygen consumption. Correct. So when you get down and you look at whether he burns a fat or carbohydrate, that's all done at the mitochondria and the skeletal muscle. But of course, what you were saying about brains and everything else, I'm going, hey, I don't know that, but. When I looked at it, I kept asking. They said, well, we don't know. I said, how often do you turn over mitochondria? I remember asking this in 92, 93, 94, and people going, oh, well, we don't know. And I go, what do you mean you don't know? How do you not know? I mean, come on. I'm telling you, this is the problem. And I had, two docs call me, and one guy wrote a book on it, and one guy said, are you this? And I said, no, I just want to know. But the deal was with Greg, it really is, at that time, a sign of, so you get these mitochondrial myopathy. So there's clearly like anemic children. Okay, that's a different thing. But these chronic overtrainers actually get run down. Right. And so the mitochondria gets actually beaten up, if you think of it that way, like your immune system.
Exactly.
And so the time off, and that's, again, one of the flaws with training year-round at a high intensity, is that you need to have a downtime, and it's basically to let your mitochondria come back to learn how to burn fat again, as opposed to burning carbohydrates. It's also a way to mentally come back to not being an animal, this fight or flight, knowing that I have to peak tomorrow because the games are tomorrow. I got to win tomorrow at the Paris Games. And I think you'll see it with the NBA, the same thing. And so this whole idea of modulation with mitochondria with physical activity is different because that's a skeletal muscle. But with the Paris Games, you'll find NBA players who will say that is taken away from my downtime. I'd like to go to the Paris Games, play the NBA, but if I want a back-to-back championships then you're going, wait a minute, where's my off time? So that's their. So they will say it'd be fun to get a medal, but I'd rather win back-to-backs. And if I need time off, you'd say, well, and it's all based on recovery, so now when you started doing it, I'm going, hey, I got to find out what this guy's doing with the brain, because aging and Alzheimer's or memory loss, how do we stimulate that brain? And, with the green lights and stuff like that, I'm going, wait a minute, show me that. I would be like you 2 years ago. So what do you do with that brain thing? But the data is phenomenal.
No, the data's and I had the privilege of having actually Dr. Paolo Cassano on. So he runs the lab and he's an MD PhD, brilliant guy. And he runs the lab at Harvard, at Massachusetts General. Yeah. We had a great conversation. It was one of my favorite podcasts. It's amazing. Second favorite. You're the first one was my. Now it's third, because we had the first one. Now the second one. He's number 3.
Look at you.
But no, I've had some. I've had some amazing guests on the podcast. But the interesting thing is that we talk so in depth. So near infrared light. Specifically, okay, green's a little bit different, and we can talk about that, but near infrared light can penetrate the skull. Right. So in their studies, they used a class 1 laser, so it was more of a less power. We tend to use more of like a class 4 at a lower intensity. Right. You get a little bit more penetration through the skull. But anyway, they got 3% of the light. But what does it do? It stimulates the cortical neurons, and it gets right into the mitochondria. And it can actually jumpstart your mitochondria because ultimately, you know how many books there are now on how mitochondrial dysfunction it results in all these chronic diseases? Right. So it goes down to the mitochondria. So if you can actually, stimulate, repair the mitochondria in the brain, it also increases just general cerebral blood flow, lymphatic flow, all these other things, and it's highly anti-inflammatory. And so in the tests, all these things that are being studied now, when you shine the near infrared beam on a thing, what happens? Before I can tell you clinically what happens, but when you tell people, hey, and then it's anecdotal, it's this and that, but now functional brain MRIs are showing dramatic changes. You can show blood flow increases. You can show all these different things. And now they're translating that science directly to the clinical findings, which is, without question, improved cognition, improved ability to do tasks. So where is it being studied? Alzheimer's disease, any dementias, right? Parkinson's disease. There are studies that clearly...
That would be another big changer.
Clearly show. And Cassano said it in his podcast, and it's amazing. So we know that there are studies that show significant reduction in tremor after weeks of treatment, not years, weeks, reduction in tremor. So he said this, and you'll find this fascinating because you're the mammal guy, right? So he says you do it in different mammals, you do it in other primates. Right. So there's a primate model of Parkinson's disease. So if you see these monks, right, they're walking and they're doing all the. He said it's crazy. They do red light on those things. Yeah. You see them like weeks later.
No. See,
no tremor.
Again, that's what.
Are you kidding me?
When you look at, so I think what is amazing to me is what you said about that brain stem. I mean, you look at these phases. You never see a mammal who will be suicidal because their spouse died in a mammal, but you see. I mean, and so the depression and all the psychology that comes out of being a mammal compared to even the dog or the primate is fascinating to me. And so you go, dogs can be sad and they can of their spouse, but you never see. So the brain stem in the mammal human is like, wait a minute, that's a different deal.
It's keeping your heart going. It's making
like
you breathe. You're breathing,
thing.
your autonomic function, all that stuff. But
so
it's not.
I find it fascinating that when you look at the Alzheimer's, if you connect them with even going back where how socially connected were they through their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and you're going, wait a minute, what does the emotional health have to do with that disease state? And you're going, well, something is in the brain. But so that's what is fascinating to me about. And Parkinson's, everyone thought, well, that's just a tremor that you have. ALS is something that they didn't know. So you look at these neurological diseases, but the human brain compared to other mammals is just another layer of complexity and depth that you have to be open to figure out. Why is it? I mean, it's a terrible analogy, but you again. I look at you and you go, "Hey, say something simple," so I got to make sure people pay attention to us. But I had a gentleman where we live. He said, "Hey, you're one of those exercise nuts." And I go, "Oh gosh, I don't know if that's good or not." He said, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he said, "My wife has been on this great exercise program. She's always happy from exercise, and she's very, very, just loved working out, and it was so important for her. And she was happy, and we got along. And she goes, I'm going to go and we have a beautiful place that they can work out. And he goes, will you help her with her new program? And I go, what's wrong? What do you mean a new one? And he goes, well, she's really kind of backed off. And I said, well, did she stop? I mean, she get injured or what? And he goes, well. I think if she changed her program, she'd start feeling better. And I'm going, okay, no, wait a minute, that's a different question. And I go, well, what happened? And he said, well, a year ago, our son was killed by a drunk driver. And I'm going, what? And he goes, yeah, and she just doesn't feel like exercising, and she doesn't. And I'm going, wait a minute, no. She needs to find a support group for mothers who have had similar accidents, just like Alcoholics Anonymous did. Yes. And I said, so mentally she can come back, and then the exercise. But again, I'm going, wait a minute, what else can we do to her brain where she doesn't have a support group? So again, if people who live alone, you got to figure out what can you do to the brain, because we're not going to have this big community where we all live together. But again, it was interesting to me that she could not get past that emotional depression. And then some of it will live forever with these people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And justifiably so. I mean, that's catastrophic. But if you can seek the right help,
but you have to find a support group in that situation.
Yes, absolutely.
So in your case, you're saying, we have treatments for that now that we didn't have. Like, you go back to the 50s where everybody was locked up and did lobotomies on people. I mean, that was just the insane asylums where what was the treatment, in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One of my favorite movies.
Those were true stories.
I know One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is. Yeah,
we were
it's amazing.
We were testing firefighters in this place in California, and I was like, okay. And we went in, and the guy said, well, across the street is where they would lock up all the youth who were Down syndrome or whatever. And, it was terrifying to me, because the guy went in and he said, did you go look at the doors, on the inside of the doors? And I'm going, don't depress me anymore, because I'm like, and he goes, no. He said, where the kids were, they were scratching the door to try to get out because they were, and I'm going, wait a minute, what country are we in? And one was, and he goes, no, that was in the 50s. So if you look at psychological, emotional status, anything that you can do that is this revolutionary is like to you saying, we now do laser on ACLs, or we now do scopes. And you're going, what do you mean? Well, I thought we had to cut the whole knee open. So the brain to me still is like an amazing thing. What you're doing here is just like, it's like when I said, maybe we should get these cardiacs to walk. And they go, no, we can't do that. No, so I find it absolutely fascinating. And what's sad to you, I think, with the data is the pushback you'll get is, no, we like to treat them, we make more money on them.
No, listen, okay. It's so difficult, just in general, like light therapy, for example. One of my favorite people in the world now, Dr. Scott Zeman, he actually founded this company, Ortho Laser. Okay. So we're always kind of, I was just on his podcast. He was on mine. He's a great guy, and he's really, pushing it. And he's really frustrated because he talks to our colleagues. Right. And he tells them, hey, light therapy is literally changing the game for our patients as far as managing their pain, either whether they're having surgery or not. It's a game changer. So he gave me a great thing to use, and I use it now all the time. He just says, do you believe in photosynthesis? To his colleagues. And they're like, oh, yeah, photosynthesis. It makes light grow. Because we learned that in school. He's like, well, photobiomodulation, it's the same thing. Instead of it affecting the chloroplast.
Right.
It's affecting the mitochondria because there's chromophores in there. They can absorb it, right? There's cytochrome 4. There's this whole complex.
So again, in the same way, if you look at the plants, you can say, like we were doing this thing with Alaska. You look at bone density and teeth loss with people with no sunlight. You're going, well, vitamin D isn't that without the sun. You're going, wait a minute. So you're telling me there's light? I go, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. The sun is a light. It just happens to be a light that you call the sun. But if you say a green light, you're going, why is that light? But the thing I want you to explain to me and tell me why. Because
please. I'd love to.
People drill me on this crap all the time, and I go, hey.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, what's up with all these people imitating red lights wherever I go? They go, I got this treatment. You come on and we turn a red light on and the world will change. And it only destroys legitimate science.
Listen.
So how does that happen? How do they get by with that crap?
Here's what I'll say. People, we know that red light works, okay? Right. And it's not real. The red light, superficial. Right. Just red light. Right. Those are different. But when you get into the near infrared range, that's where really all the power is. Right. So there's some home devices that are good. There's some that are not so good. There's so many on the market now that I'd have to go one by one and say this is this. It's all about the irradiance, the power, what wavelength they're using, and what frequency you're doing. You have to shine the light at the right wavelength is most important, and then the right frequency. Because depending on the frequency. The problem with so many of these devices, and I just got this thing, and again, I don't want to name it. It's not about that, because for me, anybody that is promoting just the general idea of red light, at least it's getting on the radar, even if it's not as effective. But you're right. If that ends up just being placebo, it's not as strong. We need to really dig into, is it medical grade? Is the irradiance strong enough? And are you using the right wavelength and frequency? But not only that one-size-fits-all approach, it can work some, but it's whatever. So, for example, we talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger and working out. If he, when he was a teenager and started doing that, never ramped up his workout. So if he started bench pressing 150 pounds and he kept doing 150, now he has amazing genetics, so maybe that's not a good example. But you have to change, you have to cycle, you have to do all these other things. And so the difference between doing a very rudimentary red light bed, which like some of these gyms have, and some of the other things, again, power to them. Kudos. I'm not going to take it away. That's not my role. The difference is, though, that when you're looking at approaching like severe fatigue, chronic disease, all these other things, there are very specific protocols that are being developed. Some of it is a new science, and some of it there's hardcore data on it. You really need to cycle through some of these things. We really cycle people through different things. So we'll transition them. For example, in photobiomodulation, we'll start them at certain time lengths and getting near infrared. And then we'll graduate them, depending on their condition, to near infrared with the green light. Green light actually is absorbed in hemoglobin and oxyhemoglobin, so it actually supercharges your blood cells, and then we do all this oxygen stuff. It all titrates. And then it also releases your body's endorphins. A lot of that happens through the eye and brain connection. And it's fascinating, but that is very, very different. It's very different as far as if somebody has, for example, and again, this isn't medical advice. It'd be people that have to come and get a full consultation to talk about these things. It's just this is for general knowledge. For example, if somebody has a chronic illness, if they have, for example, MS, and they're struggling with a lot of fatigue and all the things that go, or any other autoimmune disorder, getting red light therapy from something that has very low irradiance is not the right. We don't even know what the wavelength is. It has no power. It may be around the margins. It'll help them some, and there might be some other effects, some placebo effect, or maybe there's some real effect. But it's very different than having explicit protocols
that's what I'm trying to
do
get
it.
at.
It's a very different model.
So, and I think I made this comment to you earlier with all the performance enhancing drugs in sport. It's different when someone says, I want everybody, to take a half or a baby aspirin a day, because we all, regardless of the person taking it, they're all very similar response to, like, a baby aspirin, what it does for the blood. But when you look at a sport, they'll say, okay, we're going to give the same drugs to the 100-meter as we give to the 10K runner.
Yes.
And you're going, we're going to put them on the same dose, and one guy got better and the other guy didn't. And you go, well, they're different athletes with different timelines and different mitochondria or different DNA or different training effects and different cycles. And so, again, I look at red light or even when you look at some of the original physical therapy stuff, with you go, no, we're treating, and even some of the injections were just basically just an injection. Some worked and some didn't, and you go, well, maybe it was the guy giving the injection that was the problem, and not necessarily the person. So, but there's no question that the brain is still, to me, an amazing piece in the human male or man. Sorry about that. Just because all of the psychological issues of depression or Alzheimer's is still letting them lay there not knowing who they are for 10 years until their biology finally says, okay, I'm going to stop the heart.
Until it catches up to them. They're just suffering.
That's just a frightening profit center for somebody.
Let's just think about it, okay? As we age, what part of the brain declines? It's the frontal lobe, right? And we know this. You look at functional MRIs, you look at all this stuff. If you shine this light, okay, it stimulates the mitochondria. Right. You see improvement in that. And so people have postulated, again, there's a lot of research that needs to be done on this stuff. But when you have something that's so safe, and we know that if you shine the right wavelength at the right frequency on the brain, on the cortex, especially the frontal cortex, that immediately you're going to improve your cognitive abilities. This has been shown. And now they're smaller studies. We need to do very wide studies. But again, the money's not there because this is not what we focus on in our. But it's being done. It's enough. Yeah. But we see it. We see it through these smaller studies. And again, Harvard's really leading the way on this stuff. And it's just fascinating. And it is one of those things where Dr. Cassano, again, he's pleading people. Hey, we really need to look at this stuff. We need to think about these things, because imagine a world where transcranial photobiomodulation, I'm going to tell you about me. I'm going to give you a personal story that I haven't talked about before. But when you look at transcranial photobiomodulation, what if people just did that as a baseline and it actually makes your cognition better? Yeah. And then you expand it to all the people that do have cognitive decline. So there's actually a chapter in Dr. Hamblin's book, who's coming on my podcast here in July, that he talks about, and I don't remember the author per se, but it just says, in the future, they envision a world that anyone, as you get towards 70, everyone gets trained. It's a normal, it's a doctor recommended
it has to be. And that's why, again,
thing.
What I find interesting, that the physician in you comes out and says, what we do now, we never thought possible, robotic surgery.
Yeah, of course.
But if you think, okay, here's how we treat Alzheimer's, we have them do, crossword puzzles. And I'm going, what if they didn't know the answer ever? So how do you know that their memory's gone? 10 letters for this. You go, his memory's gone, doesn't remember it. No, he never knew it. But that was the cutting edge treatment, for all. And I'm going, really? That's cutting edge.
I mean, there's art. You can look them up. There's art. I mean, people still do that. They're like, if you do crosswords, you're not going to get. You're not going. And again, it helps to keep your brain sharp. Absolutely. We're not diminishing it, but there's so many other things that we can be doing.
Say, well, we're not going to treat with insulin, or we're not going to treat antibiotics, or we're not going to treat anything else. You'll just suck it up and get over it. It'll eventually go away. Your sinus infection, your body will fight that virus, and you're going, well, you know what? I kind of like the antibiotic thing. And you go, well, when you're 90. You're going to be mad. I'm going, are you really seriously? I'm going to be 90? No. So, but that again, I think all goes back to why I find you fascinating.
Thank you.
The people don't realize that, these biomarkers you have after adolescence or after you have, so if you have some kind of a depression that's triggered by something as a child, how long that sticks with you. So each of these phases, your brain has to adapt to jump to the next one. Now, again, the great news on this one, that maybe is the best analogy, is that if you say what's the difference between gestational and birth, is like, well, you're no longer gestational because you were born. So that phase of biology is gone. You don't have to worry about that one. So you go into the next phase, but then you say, okay, and the other one obviously is menstruation for women, is that you're postmenopausal. You go, okay, that is now stopped. So now you're in the next phase. So for you have these biomarkers along the way of saying what happens in the mammal, whether it's in their brain. That's so important that if they're sedentary. And so again, why should we teach the 5th grade or the 4th, 5th, 6th grade a second language at that time, as opposed to just
it's the right phase.
You're going, no, that's the phase.
That's the phase.
Right. And so you're going, well, let's
phase.
teach the 80-year-old how to speak, German. You go, or how to, learn Chinese. You go, dude, you should have done that when he was that. He would have magnified it. And so the same thing to you is these phases on the brain are just a new way of training that's fascinating to me.
It's fascinating. I'm just saying, like, after reading all these studies myself as a scientist, and that is, I think, one of the things I'm trying to bring is that listen, I'm a hardcore Western trained scientist. I mean, I'm not a bench guy, but I'm a clinical guy. Right. And I love science. Right. I'm a science geek. Books, right? Everywhere, right? Nutrition. I mean, a science guy. I just consume this stuff like nobody's business. This is what I've been like this since, as a kid. But after consuming all this stuff on the brain, obviously I see a way forward, which is so fascinating. Why would we not do something that has, as far as we know, and it's been studied extensively, there's all these post-stroke studies on photobiomodulation. Some of them were very positive, some of them were equivocal, but one of the things they did find is there was no downside. There's no that's the key. Because number one thing, right? If you want to get something FDA approved, what's the number one thing? You're not killing people. Right. Light therapy to your brain, not going to kill you. So that's part one. Phenomenal. But after knowing all the research and science, I've actually adapted it to my own. In fact, me and my partner, Dr. Sipple, Thieving, and it's funny because when we first started talking about doing the project, again, he was already a biohacker. Right. I was on a Zoom call with him, and I see him put his helmet on with the light therapy, and I do it routinely. Right. You know how much, it's just, I have taken on so much right now in my life.
By the way, I've never seen a guy that works as hard as you.
I mean, I work, tirelessly at this point, but however, I'll be the first person to admit, the human body, because of the need to turn over our mitochondria, to refresh, to recharge the battery on its own, if I was doing this just on my own, just by getting better nutrition and sleep, could I do a lot of this? Yeah, but the biohacks have allowed me. So I can tell you that very often I do my own cognitive therapy on my brain with the light, and it makes it, you know what, doing the therapy on myself, for example, before a surgery day, but I was also I run our company, I have a million things going on, I have a million things. My level of sharpness, because of using the transcranial laser, it's hard to explain to people unless they do it themselves. And again, I'm happy to tell people, I'm not making a claim. I'm not saying that, oh my God, you're going to be cured of all these things. I mean, there's some good science that's coming around. But I will tell you, what an experience. I have so many friends now that they've gotten into this transcranial laser therapy. They are no less than obsessed because they're like, I've never been sharper and clearer.
But again, you see that with people. So, I mean, to me, I think the difference between an active therapy and a passive therapy, again, I'm not opposed to meditation and calm and quiet and stuff like that.
I love all that stuff
but
too.
The reality is the brain doesn't get stimulated. Yeah. It just rules out all the extraneous stuff. And so, it's kind of like saying, how do you get stronger? I don't do anything and I let my muscle relax. No, you got to be actively stimulating that muscle. And so the brain still, if you go back, no one gives it the credit. I mean, some people say, well, the brains don't respond. I go, well, how come people who have stroke can learn to speak, some couldn't? So the brain, but we always thought it did something. But you're still the guy I'm going, I don't know what this guy's doing, but man, he's amazing to me. So I got to give you a lot of credit.
But it's not me. Again, and I always say this, the way I see myself, in this space, I'm not inventing these things. I'm not whatever, but I can understand it, right? I can understand the physics of it and how it works and the biology and all these other, this is what I've studied my whole life. And so I want to be that communicator to get it out because something's wrong. We're not communicating it in the right way. I had so I did my first, it hasn't been released yet, but I did my first, and I know you can talk to this, but I did my first podcast, Wellness at the Speed of Light, but it's called The Stories. Okay. So I'm just going to bring on patients, not my patients, but just people that have been patients, that have been in the system, and whether it's like an herb or whether it's the most advanced robotic surgery that's ever been tried, a facial transplant, whatever, I plan on having all these cool people on. It was just a fascinating thing, and it's something I talk about all the time as far as the way we're communicating with people. I'm talking about the traditional medical world. this lady had cancer, and she was already in a situation where she had already had some exposure to some holistic stuff from her family. Because we have to take into account culture. I know you're a big culture. No, you're the culture guy, right? And so it's so interesting. So she said that when chemotherapy was presented to her for her cancer, and again, I encourage people, if your doc says you need chemotherapy, really, you really need to think about doing it because, again, there's so many new things that are out that can be very beneficial. That wasn't the point of the story. The point of that series that I'm doing now, the stories, is not to get their understanding of the hardcore science, because most people, don't understand. But the point is that she told me that the doctor, instead of being very empathetic towards her and saying, because she's like, I want to do this naturally. I've heard of these other things, whatever. I don't know about it, but I want to learn about it. Immediately cut her off and said, you know what? You just signed your own death sentence. You're a goner. 6 weeks, goodbye. I don't need to see you. You don't need me. Why don't you get out of here? And unfortunately, that attitude has really hurt us because we need to be open to some of the, and I just laughed with her and I said, listen, of course, I mean, you think, and the crazies, I mean, she did some pretty wild stuff. And again, I'm not, those are not I'm not promoting anything, but I'm listening because I need to know how to listen because that is going to affect the way we make our recommendations. But anyway, got into this big discussion. And I've always been like this about how open we need to be. So if Dan comes in and you say, you know what, in my culture, when we get sick, we ride elephants 3 hours a day. And my grandma got an amazing, she had cancer and she got healed. If I minimize that to you, it automatically breaks our relationship so that if I want to, if maybe riding elephants is the answer. How can you tell with all the education and training they get? How am I to dispute whether I don't know?
Well, again,
I don't know. So how do we get over ourselves in the medical world and start understanding that there are more ways than one to do things, but we can only tell them what we're experts at, but not cut them off when we don't even know
so
what they're talking about.
When we go back to the Blue Zone studies,
love Blue Zone stuff.
The deal was the only spot in mainland USA was the Seventh-day Adventists who were in the pocket, and I'm going, so it was their culture. It has nothing to do. You're going, wait a minute. Why? So what? And you can make the same statement for the Amish in southern Minnesota.
It's culture.
They don't. They have no vaccines. They have no antibiotics. They have no nothing. They have no TV. And you're going, they're all lean, active, and healthy. And so I'm sitting there going, wait a minute. No, that they're whatever. So I think when you look at the cultures across the globe, you have to look at. And you can call it medical practices, you can call it whatever you want to, and they go in some tent and the heat comes out. I'm going, I don't know what's going on there, but somehow, and so you don't know if it's voodoo, but I think the brain, though, is going to be the next frontier. And if you go in with the idea that hallucinogenics, no, that's for nuts. That's LSD, no, that's for nuts. That's back in the 60s. But I wonder on age groups and dosage. But to me, the fear with lights is when I go by the store of, a local fitness center and it says, hey, we do green lights or red lights. And, it's like, I'm going, no, you're hurting medical science. But I think the downside for you is medical science says we make a lot of money treating these people. Don't come in and try to fix something so I don't know. But you again, look at GLP-1s. I mean, it was supposed to be for diabetes. But the weight loss is what it's being sold as. People are buying this drug for. Everyone wants to lose weight, so now they're taking. That's a whole
other can of worms.
When someone opens up a drug,
that's a whole other thing.
No, again, but the side effect is now being sold as the treatment, and you're going, no. Viagra was never meant for what it was done. It was a vasodilator, and yet everyone knows. No, it doesn't. I go, no, that's what it was made for.
Of course it was.
So you're going, we're going to keep selling it.
Well, that's why people get headaches, right? You're vasodilator. You get plenty of.
You're going, but the medicine says, no, we sell stuff, and that side effect we didn't see coming. So I think when you try to introduce something into the medical world, you got to figure out how do you get the data, and who doesn't want you to be successful is the people who are saying, no, we treat that, we make a lot of money treating
it's
and that's disappointing.
There's so much fear in general in the thing because we've turned the whole medical industrial complex. It's a pie, and everyone's just trying to get their part of the pie, but it's a big pie.
Yeah.
And if we got to slice it a little bit different, and so the pie, we need to spend a lot more money on lifestyle changes and this and that. However, that's one thing, and I'm a lifestyle. That's most of the things I talk about. Diet, all this other stuff. We didn't even get into Alzheimer's disease and Dean Ornish's study that came out on veganism and decreasing Alzheimer's disease. There's tons of stuff on Atkins diet and improving the brain fog in people that have dementia. That's a whole other thing. But when you talk about the pie, there's so much fear that because there are these things that people can do that can make dramatic differences in their life, that somehow it's going to take away. Now, the truth is, it is going to do some stuff, because I will tell you, if people do get into biohacking and they combine that with lifestyle changes, it's going to be a lot less people in the medical ICU. There's a lot less diabetics. There's going to be a lot less morbidly obese people. There's going to be a lot less everything. It just is. That's not even... It's not conjecture. It's not my opinion.
No,
it's the most. It's so obvious, and people will turn. There'll be pushback, but that's pseudoscience. That's really.
The whole point goes back to the penalty of longevity in the mainland USA is we've now got people. We got how many millions of people over? Like when I was born, I mean, at local block, there's 500,000 people in the U.S. who are over 85 years old. So when I turn 85, it's going to be 19 million. Okay, so now not dying young has this whole bunch of people. So all this stuff, and you say, well, we should have learned that 50 years ago. Well, 50 years ago, there weren't a bunch of old people. Now there is, and so now you got to figure out what are you going to do with them, and you're going to just lock them up like we did in 1950. So, and most of it will be tied to the human brain, is what it gets down to, because you can put them in a nursing home and push them around in a chair. But cognitively, we haven't figured out anything other than just let them atrophy, and you're going, boy, that's humane. And I think it's of all the things that you look at with aging, Alzheimer's, depression, are things that you go, what did we not miss about that? Bicep strength, fine. She can open a jar. She can, and whether it's a man or a woman that's aging. But their brain is this thing you're going. So the tremors were one that you see with.
But Parkinson's, but tremors. I mean,
but that's a different thing.
That's a different thing. But it's a big thing. But listen.
But the lady whose son died in the car accident, she's never going to forget that unless we figure out how to make that brain move past that depression. Yeah, and all the. I mean, and that's community. That's family support. That's all the other thing. But you're getting me now. Now you're getting me fired up. Well, you got these old. Listen. Right. You got these. Okay. You got all these old people around. Some just have natural cognitive decline, but so much dementia, and a lot of it is because of lifestyle choices and other things. Not that they wouldn't have gotten dementia, but they might have gotten it at 80 instead of 59 or 52. Right? Alzheimer's disease is getting earlier. It's actually it's beyond alarming what's happening on that front. But here's my thing: who's more vulnerable than people that don't have this? Right? Yeah, no, again.
So I'm just, and again, I always want to stress, I am still deep in my heart a hardcore physician. I love science. I love this stuff. And there are some drugs that I like. And it's funny because, listen, people throw daggers at me both ways. I post something about like a new drug. They're like, oh, now you're pushing drugs. I post something about stuff. They're like, oh, now you're pushing pseudoscience. I mean, you can't win with anybody, but you can, because we can have open minds and talk.
Well, that's why I'm here. I mean, and you know that, because to me, the whole point is we got a bunch of old people that should have died at 60 when no one had care.
I mean, this is your
Medicare.
This is your
Social Security would have been perfect. Medicare would have been perfect. Everybody dies at 62. No one would have complained about anything. But now they're not. So now we got to figure out who houses them, who feeds them, who bathes them, who washes them. How do we pay for all this stuff? And you're going, well, they were supposed to be dead.
But why are we seeing? But we're seeing these elderly people, especially when they are starting to decline. Right? We're seeing them. Right, as targets to sell them stuff.
They're nothing more than
very expensive stuff. It's consumers, right? It's RPU, right? You listen to every single major company in their reports when they report earnings. They talk about revenue per user, and that's what we care. And so here, I just want to give this anecdote. And again, everyone can. This is. I'm not attacking. I'm not doing anything. We have somebody that works for us. She's amazing. And she used to work at a nursing home.
Yep.
You know why she left?
Yeah. My gut says. Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons why she left. She said that at this particular nursing home, they would have a provider come in once a week and change everybody's meds. Yeah. And literally, she said the amount, like just these are people, okay? They're demented. Right. Let's be honest. I'm not. It's not derogatory.
That's why
they don't know. They don't know where they are. They can hardly recognize. They're being wheeled around. It's miserable.
Right.
Why are they on 30 meds?
Right.
Honestly, what are they doing?
So the biology works great. It's just this piece of the brain. That is why I think what you're doing is phenomenal.
But you're interfering because you can't eat, like some of the side effects they have, they can't voice it, then they're getting sicker, and then they're just upping they're doing this and that. But I had, so this woman that I had on, it was random. She just wanted to tell me about her mom, like my podcasts are just it's just, we get into whatever we get into. This is a true story. She actually showed me, like she literally yesterday sent me pictures. She wanted to show me the before and after. So her mom has Alzheimer's disease. And her mom was in this home, and she went there one day, and she had her bag of pills. Goodness. And again, this is definitely not medical advice because I have no idea. I don't know what the pills. I don't even know what the pills were. Half the time, so I don't know what the pills were. So she looks and she's like, you know what? Mom doesn't know us anymore. Right. She doesn't know whatever. She literally told them, she's like, we're throwing out all her pills. Right. We're throwing out all her pills. This is a true story. So they take all her meds, flush them down the toilet. 3 weeks later, she's up walking around. She remembered her daughter. She's having conversations with her. So not only does she have, that doesn't mean she didn't have Alzheimer's. There was a misdiagnosis. It means that her Alzheimer's was actually made a million times worse by massive polypharmacy. Right. And this has become, this is normal. Yeah. This is normal. You know what she wasn't offered? No one said, hey, let's do some transcranial red light therapy. Let's do transcranial electromagnetic stimulation. Let's do these other things. Because there's this other thing, that's a whole thing. I mean, I had a couple experts on transcranial electromagnetic stimulation. That's a little bit of a higher, you stimulate the brain. It's like a very low level of ECT, but that's being done. No one said, hey, what about intermittent fasting for mom or veganism or something like those are two kind of good diets that are being studied. Nothing. We're just, you know what? Oh, now she has this. Oh, no, she has the urinary tract. Let's give her Cipro. Let's give her this and that. It's just, this is what we do. But hey, how much? You know how much money is being made behind all that? That's RPU. Yeah. Unbelievable. Unbelievable profit center.
I'm sorry. Of longevity in the mainland USA. We've accepted being sedentary, and we've accepted the medical model of treat them for this and just prolong them and keep pushing them down. And it worked if they all dropped it at 65. But, every boomer is out there is going to go, I don't know, that's a sign. I'm not looking for that. I mean, that's a long time. And I had the ALS is an interesting story, but it's still amazing to me that the human brain hasn't been actively looked at as a treatment as opposed to treated, so pharmaceutical. We haven't figured out how to cognitively keep that brain through that final phase. And again, I asked the easy question, why do we teach second language when they're 5-year-old? Because the brain says, hey, I can learn a second language like now, like this.
Like that, yeah, the connections are there.
Well, then do it then. But you say, well, why do we do it when they're old? Well, they can't learn anything now. Just let them sit in the nursing home and look out the window. And I'm going, I get it, but no other country seems to have that many people sitting around. And again,
I honestly don't want to do that. What? So that I can see my grandkids. One time every 2 weeks they come by, and I'm just and again, listen.
So that's my point. You go back to a culture. If you look at globally,
yes.
The U.S. with automation was rapidly the quickest obese nation on the globe.
But you catch up.
And I'm going, okay, so now who's following us? The UK is following us. I mean, we're on the phone with Singapore. We're still, I'm going, hey, don't look at us for reasons. You should look at the U.S. for what happens when you have 60% of the obesity.
This is literally what not to do.
Right. And
don't do this.
And say, well, we build this fitness center. No, if you're 20 to 40, that's a great place to go. But when you're 40 and over, you got to figure out what you're going to miss because you're going to come to a day when you can't do it, and then they're going to put you somewhere. And again, the human brain still goes back to whether it's your central nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, or deeper than that, your emotions, your cognitive thought. somehow you have to be able to trigger that and train it, just like we train a bicep or a heart. And right now, it's never been thought of, and to me, that's scary.
Well, I think the combination. I mean, my kind of secret sauce again for brain, for brain health is obviously the exercise is very important, and when you can do HIIT, it's amazing for brain. Resistance training is great. You're a master. I mean, I'm not going to preach to I'm not going to preach to the master on those things. You can give us a lecture on all those things, but then obviously keeping your brain sharp. One of the things people don't talk about enough is the fact that people obviously age. The brain and the body ages a lot slower when you love what you're doing. That's why I love doing this. I know that going down this path for me, I mean, I love doing spine trigger and stuff, but this is like a passion for me. I love talking to people. I love talking about this stuff. I know this is going to, just thinking. But then meditation, I know it's hard for a lot of people, and that's passive, but it keeps you in that parasympathetic state. And then there's positive thinking, being around people you really like, getting away from it, and then the diet, getting away from toxic exposures, all these things. We can talk for hours about exposure to plastics. The veterans and their burn pits and all this. And then on top of that, now we have these super biohacks between oxygen therapy and light therapy and all these other stuff. This stuff has been I sat next to a guy. He was showing me research he was doing at the University of Michigan in some oxygen tank. I was like, were you at Chernobyl? Like this massive tank they used to put patients in, and they were doing it for other stuff, burns and stuff, but a lot of people were doing it just for health. But yet this is still considered to the day. They're like, no, you just need this pill, or you just need this other thing. We need to keep the brain okay.
I applaud you as a physician, because I don't remember going through medical school where they say, here's how you become a radical. I hate the medical model. No, I made I've 9,000 surgeries. You were very good at your outcome. You probably paid back your medical debt. You didn't ask for it. And so, but here's a guy telling me we got to do better with the brain.
No,
I can put a guy's spine back together in my sleep, but I can't. We got to do something better.
Dr. Nussbaum sat in that chair. I had him. He was one. He was my second podcast that I ever did. He's my partner, just a world-renowned, neurosurgeon. And I said, well, how much do we really know about the brain? And he's like, very little. That was number one. This is a world-renowned guy, right? No, completely humble about it. This is his whole life. And then then the other thing he said, he's like, what? I was like, well, one of your frustrations? He's like, I could take out a tumor. I could do this huge surgery. We could do brain bypass, and the person could come back. But then they come, and he said, here's what modern medicine's bad at. They come back and they say, thanks for fixing that. Thank you. You saved my life. I feel terrible. I don't know what to do. He's like, the Western medicine? They're like, go find the hobby, or instead of a full sandwich, eat a half. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? So the last thing I will tell you on that front.
By the way, we do talk. This is why I said I told my wife. I said, no, I'm going to go sit down with that guy, because I'm afraid the conversation is going to be anything. If you would have told me, you and I, what are we going to talk about today? I go, I have no idea.
No idea.
We don't care. Whatever comes out is going to be both of us going, hey, I want to ask this guy as long as
I was going to say, you keep saying that. It's funny because if you talk to people, everybody knows that the current medical system needs to be disrupted. You ask anybody. And so the guy, I love that he's a big AI guy. He thinks AI is going to change everything. Robert Pearl, he ran Kaiser Permanente for 16 years. I had him on my podcast. He's like, it's a disaster. He has all these good books. He has one book. It's called Uncaring, and it's basically how the medical system is killing doctors and patients. We're getting killed in this system. We have to change it. We are trying to completely disrupt the system. I know there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be a lot of stuff, but I'm just out here trying to help, and I'm trying to bring guys like yourself that have amazing expertise. And you sometimes downplay what you've done. I mean, you're like a legend here in the Twin Cities. You're a legend here in the Twin. And all these other brilliant people, and getting all these like-minded people together who have names, who have credentials behind them, who have worked with Greg LeMond and all these people, and can say, oh my God, this is it's nothing short It's an unmitigated, slow train wreck disaster. And anybody that doesn't see it and looks in the eye of the American, like there's some of these politicians, who knows what they say. Anybody that says that our system is working for the average American, it's an absolute, that is a lie. Straight out a lie.
No, again, I don't know. I'll tell you what.
Part three.
My second book, when I finish that one, called Playing the Back Nine, I'll come back and I'll tell you what it's like standing on the 18th hole, putting the last putt with four buddies, saying, "This is the last hole. We're all going to stand here. We're going to make this final putt, and we're going to enjoy."
It's funny because I had your book. Your book was actually sitting right here, but I was reading it. I was reading a chapter again, so I brought it home, and I'm like, I didn't even have it in the.
But again, the reality is, we all have one initial swing. We're born, and we're going to all have one final putt. We're going to die, and somewhere along the 18 holes, you're going to say, "I quit." I quit. I look out the window at 15.
I want to get to 18. I want to get to that 18th hole.
And I'm going, I wish I was still out there walking the course. Could be your dog, could be your hawk, but I want to stand on 18 and I want to be able to putt. And I want to be able to make it, and I want to pick it up and go, this was one wealthy, healthy life. And I mean, a lot of guys are figuring it out, but sitting around waiting to be treated to walk that is not the answer.
No,
and if you think you are, you're going to be watching the last 4 holes of your life through a window that you're going, I wish I would have done something.
You know what? It's funny. I have I've become good friends with this Margaret Wallace, and she's all over social, and she came up with this Preventative Health Awareness Month in Canada. And it actually got picked up by the government. It's officially like a month, right?
Good for them.
And so I'm going to work with her to be the American branch. So I'm trying to bring Preventative Health Awareness Month here because we really need to get these initiatives out. And I'm actually going to tap on you to reach out to Arnold for me because I want him to be part of this initiative. And it's right up there. And a lot of people will be part of it because this is a national movement. This isn't like we're trying to do this. But Margaret, one of the things I stole from her from the first time I ever met her, one of her taglines is, we need to be CEOs of our own healthcare. And that is one of your big messages. We need to be CEOs of our own health. Waiting around to get sick, to come to me, to come to a doctor, to tell you take this pill or that pill, it's not. It is not working. Yes, if you're critically ill, if something goes wrong, doctors, amazing. My colleagues in every specialty, brilliant people, they're doing great things. However, maybe you don't need to see them ever. Yeah. And if you want to prevent chronic disease, if you take on the onus of taking care of yourself and doing these things that you preach ad nauseum in your in your books, right? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, come on! I wish we had another 2 hours to talk about this because I'm just getting started. I mean, I'm just getting started.
If I convince my wife that I don't come to Minnesota in anything other than maybe the month of July, it's 50 degrees outside, and I'm going, come on! I thought July was like a warm time.
No, it's not 50. It feels like 50 to you, but it's actually, what was it? I think it was 67 this morning. You're probably freezing.
We're sitting in Eden Prairie going, could they find a freeway that wasn't straight in this town? It's like, hey, everything's like a bad spaghetti noodle.
It's wild.
But the flagship, when we opened that up with Greg Lappin, by the way, the smartest guy I ever met, Greg Lappin, and when it comes to the club world, it was his club that built down there that was a real pioneer. And you could look back, and I'm very fortunate when I come home or I come back to this area, just like you when you go back to New York or whatever. You'll drive by something, and you'll start laughing. You go, "Oh my gosh, that was 44 years ago."
It's crazy.
When where Marvin Harr said, I said, well, why do you have the train track going right by this club? It makes so much noise you can't talk. You might as well be underneath the airport. And he goes, well, that's where we're going to sell the club to when the fitness movement goes away. We're going to sell it to the railroads as a warehouse. And I'm going, no, it's going to catch on. It's going to be a big deal. So I started laughing about, how much we didn't know and how much you know. But the sad thing is the more you know, the more you realize we really don't know very much.
No.
And the brain to me is just like, oh my gosh, who decided to just do lobotomies and everybody as opposed to actually try to get them to have active mental training, and they don't. No one does.
Listen, this is what I've been saying, and it's interesting because we are already working with some facilities and talking about this stuff actively. You're putting people in these nursing homes. What are you doing with them? They take 3 steps and then they sit down and then they go to the bed.
That's it.
What about actively treating them while they're there with light therapy to their brains.
Anything.
What about oxygen therapy? What about all these other things? Are you kidding me? Cognitive therapy, cognitive retraining, all these other things. We have to change our. If we get into, we have to change our models.
The question for you and I on that one is the spouse or the children or the person itself? When did they just decide to give up? Because when you give up, then you're just a biological time clock. And as long as, and again, when you get a surgery, if you have a bowel movement and a beat, they can kick you out of the hospital. As long as you have a bowel movement and a beat, you're alive and you're getting paid $14,000 to sit there and you're going, boy, that's not a lot of joy in that life. Yeah. So that's the piece that I now look at. We thought, boy, wouldn't it be great if we could improve heart function? That's 40 years ago. Okay, but no one thought of the brain.
But you changed the game. Look at where we got.
Now you look at it and go on, what about the brain? We probably should pay attention to this a little more.
No, the brain is
But again, when you're dead,
frontier.
no one cared. Now it's like you got 30 years of poor brain function. And it's so disappointing to watch people. You just go, that guy he or she has no idea. The kids don't know what to do. But anyway, it's always. It's a pleasure to hang out with you.
No, it's been great. This is part 2.
We'll back up again, so I can remain on the top 10 podcasts. So I'll give you a year. So if I get to number 11, call me. I got to get back in that top 10 list.
I'm sure by then we'll have so much more to talk about. No, we're excited. Listen, we really want to drive this national movement. This wellness movement is a big deal. And it really needs to be driven by a bunch of dedicated individuals that are in the know, in hardcore science, that can then translate it to the other side and get these two things together. We need to keep an open mind. We need to make so much. It's just heartbreaking to see it. And I know, you know what? You really did inspire me on that. Your whole talking about sitting in a nursing home, just looking out the window. If that doesn't depress people, you want to get depressed, go to a nursing home where people that you don't know, when it's not your family, and just start talking to everybody and the families, and you will walk out of there in a depression. We have to change the way that we treat our bodies, treat ourselves, educate. We have to fight the forces that are the big industrial complexes that are literally trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes because they're selling you. You're the product, man. You're the revenue per user. They don't care if you end up demented in some nursing home, being completely non-functional, not being able to go to the bathroom on your own. Nobody cares. You need to care. You need to care about your family members. We've got to do something. Look at these. Radical longevity, right? Obesity code, bursting with energy. Younger you. These are the things. These are the authors. These are the people that are really trying to figure it out. But who's listening to this message? We are. But
no one else is.
Exactly. They're not. They're really not. I just patient after patient. I ask them. They're like, I don't know what you're saying. I'm like, well, let's start from the beginning. Let's get it. So on that note.
Well, Jack, can I throw one more comment?
You can as much as you want. I know that you have a big meeting here in town, so I don't want to.
Perfect children, but to our left is one stud of a kid over here. He's always paying attention. He's over there going, hey, would these guys shut up? I got to get home, man. I got to get home. I got something important to do. Listen to my dad and this other goofy talk. Congratulations on having a perfect son over there.
No, I appreciate it. No, he's a great kid. His name is Xavier, and he's my younger one. He is just a technological wizard. Sets the studio up because otherwise we'd be literally.
Well, you and I'd be on a can with a string talking to it, thinking, "Hey, can you show me how to text something?"
Exactly. I'd be sending you messages with pigeons and stuff. Back to Arizona.
Thanks for the help, buddy.
Yeah. So great job on the thing. No, it's been great.
I'll let you go.
Thanks. Thanks for having you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on another episode of Wellness at the Speed of Light. I hope you enjoyed this one. This was amazing, this episode. And I wish it didn't have to end, but obviously we'll have a part 3 and maybe 4, and maybe we'll do something, maybe write a book together, because I think we're kind of on the same page there. Thank you, and we'll see everybody on the next show.